Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Rich Perez welcoming you back into another dose of the rundown. We got a special guest in with us today, Dr. Ty Scarlett. Coach, how's it going?
Good, man. Going good. No complaints over here.
I like it. Well, I know you are working as an athletic director right now with everything going on with the COVID situation. Can you kind of talk to me about how you've been maneuvering through this within your job?
Well, it's been a little interesting, right? And I think I can speak for most ADs. It's been a challenging time, um, but we've been able to kind of go with the flow. The parameters that have been set just recently by the DOH giving us approval allows us to participate in some of these high risk sports now. So I'm excited, man. I'm excited to get the kids back out there and get them back into playing sports. But we have to be safe about it, right? We have to make sure that we abiding by the um, the guidelines that's set for the CDC and that we're following all the protocols. It's a challenging task. I think every AD at this point in time have their work cut out for them. But we're all doing what we need to do, and I think we're doing what's right for the kids.
Can you kind of talk to me about excuse me, about just some of the things that you and the people around you are gonna have to do to get these kids back out there competing?
And it's probably like the common theme. What you see is everything is going to be, well, for the most part, students that are coming into the building, they have to be screened. There's going to be contact tracing. We're doing weekly checks. In addition to weekly checks, we have individually isolated the students that are participating in sports. They're actually going to be remote student learning. This way that we keep them isolated and internal into a bubble, so to say, like we're creating our own bubble. Um, in addition to that, um, no spectators. Everything is going to be live streamed. Um, and that's pretty much the gist of it. It's just making sure that we're on top of it as far as testing and making sure we're on top of it as far as keeping kids that are participating um, kind of together, because we don't want last thing we want to see is a group of kids that are participating. We bring them in and they're around another, the massive population of the students that are going to school, and there's some form of an outbreak. So we're very vigilant in our approach. I think every AD is doing their due diligence and making sure that um, all the protocols are being met and all the state guidelines are being met. Just so happens that our school district was one of the school districts that opted out of high risk sports, and that was for the safety of the kids. I think they want to at this point in time focus on academics and getting students back into um, the buildings, and you know um, so that was probably that was what we focused on as far as the vested interests of our community and our student population.
So let's take it back to the beginning. When I had Robert Cuffey on, who was a teammate of yours at Nassau, and talking to him, his start to wrestling came a little later. For you, were you just actively playing sports as a youth, and then came into wrestling later on, or was it something you were introduced to very young?
So I was actually introduced to wrestling probably in sixth, seventh grade. Seventh grade. One of my good friends, Matt Haynes, I'll give him a little bit of a shout out. He introduced me to wrestling. He was in ninth grade at the time. He wrestled in seventh and eighth grade. We grew up on the same block in Freeport. I was one of those guys that was, I guess I was a crossroad guy. Like, I didn't know, well, at that present time, seventh, eighth grade, I didn't know which way I was going. Um, he he's seen that I had some fight in me, and he said, "Hey, listen, you should participate in wrestling." I was like, I don't know, whatever. He said, but if you do, just make sure you don't quit. I remember that like it was yesterday. I was like, all right. So I tried it out, and I was pretty successful, you know, as far as a seventh grader, right? Like, so from there, you know, the community of Freeport, my coaching staff was Coach Joe Chetty, Coach Gordon. Those were my middle school coaches, and they really embraced me, man, and they made it real fun, man. We traveled so much outside on the off season. I mean, you know, you're looking back at it now and being a coach, you see how much time they dedicated to us, and it was, you know, it's something that you don't take for granted. You know, when you're going through it, you don't know, right? You're a kid, you just don't know. But when you're on the other side of things, you realize how much people gave to you, and you know, I'm thankful and grateful for that. You know, so they were the introduction to me wrestling, and that was in 7th and 8th grade.
Did you kind of take off with it right away, or was it like a gradual thing?
Well, in middle school, I was okay. You know, like in middle school, I took a little bit of lumps, but I was okay. You know, 7th and 8th grade, you know, they had them back in the day. They had the middle school counties. You know, I won the middle school counties, but I was so undersized. I was in 7th grade, I was 74 pounds. In 8th grade, I was 80 pounds. So I was, you know, I couldn't really wrestle at a varsity level because I was under the limit, the weight limit, believe it or not. So even when I got to 9th grade, I was under the weight limit to compete at varsity because I think the weight cutoff was like 88 pounds and I was like 80 pounds. So so it made it a little difficult. But yeah, I had some early success for a middle school student athlete. And you know, and then as I continued to progress, you know, things started clicking a little more. By my 10th grade year, I ended up turning into, you know, I ended up becoming a Fargo All American. And then, you know, the next year, you know, county champ and placed in the states. And then in my senior year, I was county champion. I lost in the state finals.
You mentioned that big tournament of Fargo. Yeah. Was that something that your coaches actually encouraged you to go to? Did you find out about that on your own?
It's an interesting story. So like Fargo, to think back to that tournament, so you have to qualify. I think back in the day it was top 4 in the states. Something weird happened. I mean, I think I had a concussion. Like I think I got knocked out in the tournaments of the states, and I placed like 4th or 5th. You know, something weird, right? Because I just had to default out, and you know, they were like, hey, you know, we can, you know, we'd love for you to compete on the national team, New York State national team. You know, I was like, all right. So just it's a funny story, but I might as well share. I remember my grandfather, he drove me up to Binghamton. I drove early, you know, and we didn't have much, you know, and we drove up, and he dropped me off early, and I participated with the Greco-Roman team and the freestyle team, you know, so I got pretty much like an early training camp. I felt good. I felt like I was in a flow. And, you know, went out there and I competed, you know, actually, you know, was into the round robin round, and, you know, it was one of the matches that I felt like I could have went either way. And it went the wrong way for me. But I learned from those lessons, man. And, you know, when I got back from the Fargo Nationals and competing at that level and placing, you know, I came back home and I was just like, man, this is, you know, you develop that sense of confidence, right? And then from there, you're like, you know, I think I'm ready to compete, you know, and, you know, for a high school student athlete, you know, you're ready to compete. And every next year, you know, end up winning the counties and placing in the states.
What was the mindset, you know, for you? And I guess how I'm trying to ask this, like your program, like, because you come from a tough town in Freeport. You know, some of these programs across Long Island, they're known for wrestling. Other programs, you know, throw out some kids that are tough, but they're as a whole, they're not really known for that. So was that like going out there, winning county titles, competing at Fargo, placing in the state tournament? Was that stuff that was kind of preached to you? Or was this like, growing up in Freeport, this is just like kind of a mentality that you developed out on your own?
Yeah, it was somewhat of a mentality, but I was fortunate, man. I had some phenomenal coaches. I had some good people in front of me. Eddie Gomez was a really good wrestler that came in front of me. He placed in Fargo's. Mo Thompson, he placed at Fargo's. James Hieronymus. Um, it was a lineage
Name
of
in there.
guys. Yeah, it was a lineage of guys that just came in front of me, and they were actually still in the room with me. So when I was the young kid coming up, and I'm watching them compete at that high level, and I'm like, man, these guys are great. Like I looked up to them. They were the guys, right? So I'm looking up to them, and they're going out there and they're competing very well. So I sit back and I'm watching, and I'm just waiting for my shot. And when I got the shot, I didn't really look back. But it's credit to the room that we had. It's credit to our coaching staff, man. They made us buy into something. We have some really good stories, and it was like a family-like environment. But it was just hard-nosed, tough kids, that embraced it. They embraced the grind, and our coaching staff was well balanced, man. We had some tough coaches. We had some coaches that were very technical, Mr. Hayes, Coach Sellin, Coach Chetty, Coach Whalen. Those guys in high school were instrumental in the growth process of us and our success. So, definitely credit them and shout them out, because without them, I definitely would not be here.
Right. Much respect. You just named off some big names there. James Hieronymus, who I believe was ranked in like the top 5 in Division I at Hofstra at one point. Noel Thompson was an extremely high caliber wrestler for Hofstra as well. What was, I know you talked a little bit about how good the atmosphere was over there, but like what was that room like being around those guys?
Oh, it was phenomenal. I mean, those guys, they came every practice to compete. It was fun, but it was very competitive. And by that time when James was at that high level, he was coming back and giving back in the off season. So it was like a tradition that was formed. Chris Edmonds, he would come back and give back. Eric Smith, he would come back and give back. Paul Stewart, he would come back and give back. Ed Ramirez, he would come back and give back. All these guys used to come back and give back. And it was incredible, man. It kind of instilled in me what to be when I have my moment, hopefully, and come back and give back. And that's what I tried to do. And that's what I actually, not to try, that's what I did. But yeah, like we just had a group of guys that was just ready, that was just competitive, man. I missed out one, Terry Brown. He was also competitive. He was Julian Colvin, Marlon Greenwood. Those guys, we were all in the room together. It was incredible, man. It's something that you look back now and you say, man, we had a pretty good group of guys in the room that was competing at a high level. Some pro athletes,
Yeah.
So it's nothing to snooze at.
Yeah, it's a lot of high caliber Division I guys you just named off of too. National champion and Chris Edmonds, the whole nine. For you, you said you went on to win counties. So when was it like? When did you become aware that you were really going to do something in the sport?
When I was in 8th grade, I realized at 8th grade, I felt like I had something. Like I didn't know what it was, but I felt like I can be probably good at this if I worked hard. And I really doubled down on it. Like it was one of those things where it was just like, it's either this or it's nothing. It's all or nothing, right? So I doubled down on it. And probably by my sophomore year, I remember like it was yesterday, Coach showed me an article. He motivated me, it was in that regards of showing me an article saying, hey, see, you're not in here, you should be in here. And I'm like, yeah, I should be in there. and he lit a fire under me. And probably by my junior year after competing at Fargo's and placing, I realized then that I can make something of this, if I continue to work hard and continue to grow. I could probably make something out of this. And I did, it was just one of those things where I just constantly worked at. Back then, it wasn't no real clubs, it was more just your room. It was a little different of an environment, which is great. I love the clubs because the clubs it's a melting pot of good guys in the room, and it helps individuals grow. But back then, it was a little different. It was like your room is your house, somebody else's room is their house. You only come over if you're invited. So it's a little bit of a different culture. Um, but that culture, it was different, but it was good too. It had its time.
Right. Can you take me a little bit through your run in high school? Was the goal out the gate was to win a county title and then compete in states? It was I want to be a state champ. Like what were the things that you were going through at this time?
Yeah, I think I wanted to. Well, at the time, I probably initially was county champ because at the time back then you didn't see too many multiple state champions. There was a few, but it wasn't like what it was today. Jesse was like the anomaly. He was like the outlier. He was a
Right.
full-time state champ, and we were like, man, wow, it could be done. um, but for most of us, it was getting up there and winning once or maybe twice. I don't know. I can at least that was my mindset. Um, so the person in front of me that won the state title was Noel Thompson. So he won it once. So in my head, I was like, man, I got to be a state champ at least once. So I went out. I didn't obtain that goal, unfortunately, but you know, um, it was you learned the lessons. You learned the lessons along the way, and it's not, in my opinion, it's not all about the win, right? Because even when you lose, you win, right? So the lessons that was learned in the process of going through the battle, the effort, the character development, all of that was associated in the overall win. So um, the competition is great. I fell a little short, um, that day, but I knew back then that definitely um, going through the process, embracing it, having fun, um, I'll be in the mix. Um, and I think that's kind of what I try to instill in. Well, when I was coaching, would try to instill in the wrestlers that I coach is just embracing it and having fun. Don't let it consume you. Don't let the pressure get to you. Just have fun and wrestle.
Right, right. I mean, with your career path and everything, you mentioned coaching as well. Are these kind of things that like you're preaching to the kids that you've been around and that you're around now? And how do you feel like these life experiences have prepared you for what you're doing?
Yeah, I think it goes hand in hand, right? So hopefully my experience will help them and in the pathway of where they're trying to go, right? So they learn from my experiences, and that's how I lead a room, or that's how I used to make connection with my guys that I coached. Is it's an impersonal communication kind of a thing where I'm developing a rapport with the students and saying, hey, listen, this is what I did. This is how I fell short. This is how I won. This is what I see in you. This is how you can win. And you make those connections, and hopefully they make the connections and they continue to soar. I think I had one of my strengths as a coach was to be able to make the connections with the kids and get them to compete at their highest level, because each individual is different, right? So I can speak to one kid one way and might not be able to speak to another kid the other way, the same way that I spoke to the one kid. So it's learning the kid. It's learning where their good spots, where they're good at, their good situations, um, improving their better situations, improving some of the situations that they're not so good at. Try to avoid getting into those situations, and watching film and growing as a wrestler, and just really embracing the process, because that process is it's a journey. It's not something that you do it part-time, you get part-time results. So it's one of those things where you want to be brought all into the sport, and by buying all the way into the sport and giving it your all, you in turn should yield a higher return on the investment that you put in to the sport.
Right. Were there any hurdles that you kind of had to go through during your time at high school, and if there were, like, would you mind sharing that with the audience?
Yeah. So not in high school, but more so grade school. Like grade school, by the time I got to high school, I was acclimated. I was brought into the sport. I was around some, a family, a community of wrestlers. Um, I was embraced by the wrestling community, and I'm thankful for that. My younger years was my years where, it was challenging because as a family we hopped around a lot, and it wasn't the best side of Freeport, and there was always that tug of war, as far as um, what's happening in reality, and in my life, in my personal life, and what's happening at school. And by the time I got to seventh grade, or I was able to channel that energy into wrestling, and man, it was a lifesaver. It was a lifesaver, because my coaches and like I said, the support cast, they really helped me in that regards unpack all of what I was dealing with at an early age, because naturally, without going into everything, um, I seen things growing up that probably most kids didn't see, unfortunately. And it helps me now because I'm able to, I can recognize a kid that maybe going through some of those experiences, and I can make a connection and build a rapport and try to get them out of some of those situations maybe that they're going through. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't the most rosiest garden, to say the least. Um, but I guess what's the saying say? They say what doesn't kill you make you stronger. And you learn to adapt. You learn from your you not learn from your mistakes, learn from your mistakes and also the mistakes of others, and be a better person, and and help the next person come out of the situation maybe that you have experienced.
Right. What what was what was the decision? What was the decision to get to Nassau? Was that just like we got a program that's right here with a wrestling team, and I'm ahead there. You mentioned Chris Edmonds was an alumnus of Freeport. I know he was coaching there. Was that something that also went into that?
So at the time, so realistically, when I graduated high school, I was on a bubble academically, and I needed a fresh start. I needed to lift my grades up. Um, Chris Edmonds was there, Paul Schmidt was there, Sam Thomas was there, and by the last my sophomore year, Sean Keegan was there, and he was very instrumental. Um, but we had a group of guys that kind of banded together at the states. Nick Rosenberger, Michael Trotter, myself. Um, we all finished in the state finals. We all finished second in the state finals. We all were like, man, we got to go to Nassau. Let's go to Nassau together. And we end up going to Nassau together. And like those group of guys, like by the time we got to Nassau, I think Rob was there, Puffy was there, Artie Wilder was there, Mike Cox was there, Casey Beach was there. There was a lot of good guys around there. So you went from one solid room to another solid room, and we all learned from each other. We all had fun. Our coaching staff was one of the best staffs. I mean, probably the best staff that I had the pleasure of, or one of the best staffs I had the pleasure of wrestling under. Um, I mean, we had a national champ as a coach, um, Chris Edmonds. Coach Schmidt was phenomenal as far as helping us get through and get through the academic portion in the program. Um, you know, you learn later that sometimes people take what he has done for the program for granted. Coach Schmidt is the man. He was what he has done for the kids that came through that program is nothing to snooze at. So it's remarkable, right? So I'm one of the products that came through that program, and I'm grateful to Coach Schmidt, Coach Edmonds, Coach Thomas, and also Coach Kegel at the time for assisting me in my journey of getting through there.
Right. I mean, Coach Schmidt was always, because I got a chance to wrestle for him too. He was always on top of us as far as our athletics, not athletics, our academics. But he always made sure to maintain like a competitive and fresh room. I know he's got a ton of stories. I've got the chance to hear a couple, but I heard a couple with back. This is a few years ago. My parents had thrown a party. I remember you and Rob Cuffey were back here. You guys shared a couple funny stories. Anybody that wrestles for Nassau will always have something funny to say about their experience wrestling over there. So can you kind of take us through some of the things you guys were doing over there? Because you did a ton of winning, so I'm sure there was a lot of fun that came into that as well.
We just used to joke a lot on each other, man. It was one of those funny kind of rooms where, you're young, you're 18, 19, 20 years old, you're young. So we used to crack jokes on each other, run around, some of the house parties that they used to have back in the day, we used to attend. We lived a normal college student life, but we did it at a community college, which is, you don't see that, right? Like, especially, locally, you don't see community colleges with kind of like a on-campus kind of a feel. We had like a on-campus kind of a group of guys that, we were able to, let go and be ourselves around, and by letting go and being ourselves, we end up growing as individuals because we end up seeing the walks of life of everybody that was around us, because everybody came from somewhere, right? And everybody's walk was a little different. So you're able to identify and respect, the cultures and the peoples who you're wrestling alongside of. You're able to see their pathway, and that was a neat thing. I mean, the stories is endless, man. You know, the stories are endless. I don't know if I want to put them on the airway.
We don't have to. So you yourself, had a more fair share of success on a college level. You were a two-time regional champ, two-time All American, and you contributed to a team national title for Nassau as well. What was the training like over there? And for you guys, what was the motivation factor for you guys to go out there and achieve what you did?
I mean, that was the goal. That was the goal that was set. And we gradually, that first class, that team with Cuffy, myself, Mike Trotta, Nick Rosenberg, Artie. That was the first group that put together a pretty competitive team. I think Coach Schmidt has had. That was his first like nucleus of kids that came in and finished like top 3, top 4 in the country. So after we broke through, we realized at that point, like, man, we gotta win. It's there to be won. And I think the very next year, man, we had some amazing guys come in. We had Ryan Maurer, he came in. Chris DeLuca, he came in. I forgot to mention Joe Patrovich was on the team. He came in. It was just a good group of guys. It rotated. So by the time the second, third year came in, man, we were loaded. I mean, we were so loaded that they were comparing us to Division I teams. That could we compete with Hofstra? Could we compete with Sacred Heart? Like, that was the talk at that time. I mean, is it realistic? I don't know, but that's what the talk was, right? And Hofstra had a pretty solid program back then. Tom Ryan led a good program, and Dennis does well now too. So I mean, it's just it was a good group of guys that banded together, and like I said, coach set the bar, and we went out there and we tried to obtain it until we attained it.
I mean, I honestly did. So for what you're saying, because I mean, you're bringing in guys like the names you're bringing in. These guys are either state finalists, all state, or state champs. Like I don't think it's very far fetched to say like you can't compete with some of these D1 programs because you're bringing in D1 caliber talent. That's one of the things with Nassau too that they're preaching. You know, when they want guys to be all national champions and then go on to wrestle at the Division 1 level. You brought up an interesting name, Ryan Moore. Coach Schmidt has this story that he tells every year. I don't know if you're familiar with what I'm talking about. But
You gotta refresh my memory.
I hope I'm right. I really hope I'm right. Because I want to know if you were around for this. If you could like kind of break me, kind of shed some more light on it. He says that I forgot. There might have been national duels or something that Ryan was going out and wrestling this top ranked guy, and they're telling him, just just know who you're wrestling, whatever. He's just like, he's never been in a street fight, coach. He's never been in a street fight. He's like, gets in and it just pokes him in the eye. And then like, can you kind of, it's a very long story. Can you kind of shed some light on that one for me? Because as an alumnus of the program, I've always wanted to know more about that one.
Well, that one, that year where he went out to nationals, I think was my redshirt year. So the story I got was the story that pretty much you got, right? It was and I asked Ryan. He said, "Yeah, man, he never been in a street fight. I went out there and we banged." But that was Ryan mindset, and he was unbelievable talent. I mean, I'll share a story. I remember. I'm not gonna call the kid name because I don't want to put him on the spot, but I remember Ryan. We both were gonna go to NC State together. We both took a trip down to NC State. We loved it, whatever the case may be. And it's so funny because we go in. Philip Rivers is coming out the door, and he's like, and the coach is like, "Hey, this is Philip Rivers. This is our quarterback." And we looked at him and we were like, "Oh, what's up, Philip?" And he's like, "Hey, you guys are coming to NC State?" And I'm like, and Ryan's like too. It's like, all depends on if they offer us the right money. And so we go inside, and Ryan comes out, and he's like, because we both knew that we wanted to go there. So Ryan comes out of the recruitment room, and he says something along the lines of, he says that he's like, "Did you sign?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't sign. They offered me like 50%. I'm not signing for 50%. He's like, "Oh, I signed. They gave me a full ride." I'm like, "Oh, you lucky." So he ended up signing NC State. But I mean, he was inside of the room, man. He was phenomenal, man. I seen him do some things to people in that room, without real training. Like he just come in, from class, takes off his shoes, put on his sneakers, and just no warm up, beat the crap out of people. He was one of the better guys that I seen come through that program. Ryan was the truth.
How do you feel Nassau prepared you for that next level that you were headed to?
Definitely prepared me. It prepared me on the technical side of things, right? And being able to break down matches, being able to review film, see where I need to be, learning situations. Coach Edmonds was really key on details. Like he would out wrestle guys from the side of the mat. Like he's like in the match with you, kind of a deal. And I learned a lot from him from doing that. But he would break guys down, and he'll just tell you like, "Hey, this is what you need to do to win the match," and you go out. So you take that and you take it to the next level. By the time I got to the University of Pittsburgh, it was one of those things where like you take that to the next level. You need that, because coming, from high school, you might not be able to compete with some of those guys. Those guys were, there was a lot of heavy hitters on that team. And you realize then, man, like, wow, it is another level, because it's definitely another level. And, when you're coming from another state, you have something to prove. You're a New York guy going to PA, and you're wrestling, for the most part, a group of Pennsylvania kids. And and they're coming to wrestle. They're every day. It's not a joke. So I think what Nassau did was gave me the baseline, or gave definitely a little more than not the blueprint, but the foundation to go on and compete at that next level. The stuff that I learned at Nassau was definitely very beneficial, not as just an athlete, but as also a student. It was just very beneficial, man. By the time I got to University of Pittsburgh, I was definitely more acclimated. I was more seasoned as a wrestler. I was more seasoned as a student, and it just so happened to work out.
Right. You mentioned that you wanted to go to NC State, and you ended up at Pittsburgh. What was that? What was the recruiting process like for you, and what were some of the schools that were after you and that you took visits on, and how did you end up choosing Pittsburgh over everywhere else?
Now this is a story that not too many people know. So, and I have to share it. I was looking at, there was a number of schools that I was looking at. Maryland University was one, University of Maryland, NC State, Buffalo, University of Michigan, and University of Pittsburgh. Those were the five. I went on the recruit trips to University of Pittsburgh, University of Buffalo, and NC State, all of which, outside of NC State, offered practically a full scholarship. The story of how I ended up at Pittsburgh was, I think Coach Stoudemire, he offered me 60%, and I remember, like, he offered me 60%, and that night, and this is a true story, I got down on my knees and I prayed. I said, God, if this is where you want me to go, could you show me a sign that is clear cut, that this is where you need me, this is where you want me to go, this is where you want me to go and continue my wrestling career, continue my academic career. Send me a clear cut sign, please. The very next morning, they called me up. He's like, hey, we're gonna offer you 100% full scholarship. We'll give you financial aid. You'll get your financial aid in addition to that. So I was like, wow, that and that's a real story. I was like, wow. I said, send me fax over the paperwork, and I didn't even look back. I ended up calling coaches. They were like, you're going to Pitt? Like, what? How did you decide that? I was like, I prayed. I prayed, and God answered my prayers, and the rest was history.
Take me through your time at Pitt. There was a lot of high caliber wrestlers that you were in the room with over there, and Stoudemire is, he's a Hall of Fame type of coach as well. Coach tons of All Americans, and at that time Pitt was, they're starting to get back there now with Keith Gavin at the helm, but at that time Pitt was really a top tier program to be at.
I mean, amazing college. It was top 20 academically at the time as a public school university. A private school university. And I think we were top 15 as a wrestling program as we were coming in. I came in the class of Keith Gavin, came in the class with Drew Headley and Matt Coker. All of those three guys end up being All Americans. Keith Gavin, as you know, was a national champ. It was and the coaching staff at the time was Coach Carl Fraunhofer, Jason Peters, and Coach Randy Stoudemire. We had a good group of guys. The upperclassmen at the time, Zach Dahl and Tarquinio. Those were the two kind of leading guys that was in the room, and they came to compete, man. Like I said, it was an amazing room. The level of expectations that was placed on us as student athletes was a high level of expectation. Sanshiro Abe was a part of the program for a little bit. It was just a good group of guys, man, that came to compete. You know, Keith Gavin, you know, at the time when I came in, we all came in together. We were all suite mates, right? So Keith Gavin um, and Matt Coker, they stayed right next to me in the dorm. We stayed in this dorm called Sutherland. And, you know, they were some of the most humblest guys that you would meet. Keith Gavin, Matt Coker, Drew Headley. I mean, Saturdays, guys would go out, have fun. They would stay at home. They play games, like video games. Next day, go for a workout, get an extra workout in. They were all about embracing the process and embracing the grind. And it's a testament to their success, right? They bought into the program. They bought into the expectations that were set by the coaches, and they flourished. I had a little bit of a hiccup. I had high expectations that was placed on me. They wanted me to come in and become an All American right off the bat. And I came in, and I think around September, October, right before Michigan State opened, in the room, I tore my knee, and, it set me back a little bit. I had to have surgery. From surgery, came back from surgery, jumped into a match and popped out my shoulder. And for me, that was an experience because that was my first time being injured. And at that present time, I didn't know how to handle it, because it never happened before. And here I am at this level. I'm on full scholarship, and I know the level of expectations and what I'm trying to work for, and it was a mental battle for me, because I'm bouncing back from injury to injury, and next thing you know, I'm a senior, and it's time to graduate. So, my career, I felt like the rubber never met the road at the University of Pittsburgh because of my injuries. But I have some real good war stories, in the room, and I definitely felt like I could have competed at that level, as far as the higher, top 10 level. I guess with time, it just so happens that injuries got in the way, and you learn. Like I said, everything's a learning process, and it's an experience. You learn from all of I guess the battles and the speed bumps and the journey that you're on, right? So I learned from all of these experiences, and I think what happened is it made me. I would like to think it made me a better coach. It made me be able to identify with kids that might be going through the same thing, who are suffering from an injury and might take a step back, or might be battling something mentally as far as the injury is concerned. So, like I said, all of this stuff, all of those experiences kind of made me who I am, and I appreciate it. I appreciate the experiences.
I had talked to Justin Accordino, who was an All-American for Hofstra, but he was another guy that just dealt with injury after injury after injury. A lot of people, myself included, feel like he probably would have done more had he not had to deal with so much adversity as far as injuries go. But I asked him, what he took away from that, and he basically came away with just don't take things for granted. Dealing with those injuries at Pitt. What was something that you took away from that in retrospect?
Similar, don't take it for granted, and up until the point of injury, I was giving it everything. I was, I think at the time I was squatting 500, I was benching 300, I was giving it everything. I was coming in and I was ready to go. The injury, after that injury, I remember sitting on the sideline, and I just remember feeling like, man, all of what I gave is, I'm here now. Like I'm sitting on the sideline, I'm watching wrestling, I'm watching what I want to, what I do and I love take place, and I can't compete. So like I said, it was a mental obstacle for me. And then after that, bouncing into another injury. So you 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 learn not to take it for granted. Um, you embrace, of course, you embrace the grind, and you give everything you got to it. And sometimes that's the breaks. Sometimes, unfortunately, things happen, and that's out of your control, and you get injured, and and that's what it is. But at the end of it all, man, I don't take nothing. I wouldn't give it back for the world. I got a solid education. I learned a lot in the process. I met some really good people, um, really good friends still to this day. Um, I'm still a part of the program, and like I said, like it's like it's a it's it's a marathon. The journey that we live in, as far as a student, as far as an athlete, as far as a person, it's all wrapped up experiences that makes you, hopefully you learn to be better. You learn from your experience to be better. So um, all of those experiences, is probably why I'm here right now. It's probably why I'm doing what I'm doing right now, and my passion behind what I do right now is because those experiences made me who I am today.
Right. Well, I mean, you went on after Pitt to get two master's degrees, and as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, a doctorate degree. So, did you know out the gate, like, you were coming out of Pitt, this is what I want to do with my life, or was there some thinking, at gradually through time that went behind, chasing, more education?
Yeah, I think I had a family member, my uncle and my aunt, two family members that were very successful, and their success came from having an education. So I knew that an education was going to be the difference maker. Um, and once I stopped competing as uh, an athlete, I shift my focus to academia, and you know, after obtaining my second master's degree, and I'm still in the process of obtaining my doctoral degree. Um, but it's like being at the top of the podium in a sense, right? That competitive spirit where you're like, man, there's another level in front of me. There's another level above me. Um, and you know, I want to reach that level. And once again, maybe it's because that level wasn't met as an athlete, right? So I changed my focus, and I applied that energy that I gave to being an athlete to being, a student, right? A student. And when you're in education, you're constantly learning, right? It's constantly evolving. It's not. It's what we learn today might be different 5 years from now because everything is rapidly changing with technology and how things are going as far as technology is concerned. So you constantly have to be in tune of the climate of which we are serving, right? And so I look at constant education as a requirement, right? It doesn't stop. It's ongoing. It's a part of the process that I'm gonna do or I'm gonna be a part of forever, till I'm out of here. So it's one of those things where my motivation to going back to school was partly because I seen that's one of the ways can become successful, and two, because I wanted to chase the ladder of being at the pinnacle of academia, if that makes any sense. And I felt like if I'm able to have those tools, then I can give back that to the community. I can give that back to uh, our student athletes and whoever I come in contact with. you know me. I'm not selfish of my experiences, and I'm always looking to help and elevate people who I come in contact with.
Yeah, absolutely. Can definitely attest from that. Just from getting to know you over the years. And I didn't even know that you were still chasing the doctorate. So definitely wish you the best of luck on your continued journey with that.
Yeah, hopefully this semester.
Definitely. We'll keep an eye out for it. You mentioned a little bit ago that you are still involved with the Pitt program. You were teammates with Keith Gavin when he took over. You know, they weren't exactly in the best of shape. There were some individual guys there that you know made it onto the podium, but Keith Gavin in a short amount of time has really turned that program around. How are you still involved with it? And what are the things that you're seeing him do? And are you surprised that he's been able to turn it around so fast?
Oh, so yeah, he's been his turnaround has been remarkable. And partly because of the guys he have, it's him and it's the team, right? It's the guys that he have around him, his assistant coaches as well. The nucleus, that group is they make up a good group of guys, and he has the support of the community. And I try to get back to the program. Last year, I think when they competed at nationals in Pittsburgh, I was there, and met up with the guys and everything like that. So I just constantly try to give back in that regards. And that's all you can do. And I wish they were closer. I wish I can be there all the time and support all the time. But I'm constantly watching when they're on TV. I know that they have a match coming up soon. I just was looking at the re-air of the Virginia Tech match. So I'm constantly watching and seeing the guys and try to see the progression of the guys and help any way I can. Like I said, those guys were my roommates. Um, I you know I the fact that they're coaching the program that we all attended is remarkable. And it makes you want to stay involved with the program, right? Because those were your guys. So, like I said, nothing but respect for those guys, man. They're my brothers. Nothing but love for them, and I'm always gonna support them.
I kind of lost you for a second when you were talking about the coaching staff that he had around him. But I do want to circle back to it a little bit. Because you've even off camera you've had some glowing things to say about him. Are you what? No, that's are you like what are the things that you've seen with him as an athlete that are kind of translated to him as a coach that have led to the success that he's had so far over there?
His resilience, his resilience. As an athlete, he came in. Coach Gavin, Keith Gavin, he came in, and I think he was all state wrestler. I think he took fifth or sixth in the states at PA. And at the time, I was a junior. He was a freshman. He was a 57 pounder, but he bumped up to 84 because they needed the spot filled. So he took the liberty to wrestle in 184. But naturally, he was a 57 pounder, and he competed there. And like I said, he was one of those guys that would just get extra workouts, and he just loved the sport. He embraced it every moment of the sport, and getting better. And by his junior year, it was national finalist. His senior year was undefeated national champ. You know, um, and it's all because of what he put into it. He's the true, in my definition, man. If I could speak, he's the true definition of hard work pays off. Like and I got and I appreciate the opportunity to witness that. I mean, we all live it. We all go through it. But sometimes when you see, like when you're at that age and you see it, here's a guy coming in, an all-state guy. He's not a national champ guy. He's not a state champ guy. He's an all-state wrestler, and he took to being national champ. It's not something that you see every day. It's remarkable, and I'm thankful to be able. I'm thankful to be there to witness it. It was something special to witness. And all those guys. Drew Headley and Matt Coker as well. But they had a little more high school success than Keith. So to see Keith's jump was an amazing jump that you just have to respect and applaud.
Right, most def. Ty, with the amount of success that you've had as far as wrestling and being a scholar throughout this interview, you talked a lot about wanting to be able to give back, and I know that you do that. If you go back to Freeport and there's a kid that you see that's just getting started out, what would be the advice that you would give to them?
Stay hungry, stay persistent, right? When you're just starting out, sometimes something as simple as stay in love with the sport, stay hungry, stay persistent, embrace the grind, because it's a process. Wrestling is one of those sports where, like many sports, but it's just one of those sports that it takes time to kick, right? Some people you can go in and you can wrestle and you can have instant success. But there's so many positions, there's so many situations, there's so much learning that needs to take place. And this is with every sport, but I'm just speaking about wrestling, that it takes time. You're going to take your bumps. So if you're willing to go through the storm, right? If you're willing to go through kind of that rough patch, and you have time and you're just dedicated and you're giving it your all, at some point it's gonna click, right? At some point. And realistically, like I said, it's persistent, it's being hungry, it's being in love with the sport, and it's just being persistent. Because at some point, all of the hours and all of the reps and all of the situations that you're constantly doing over and over and over and over again, at some point it's gonna click. That's why you see kids starting wrestling earlier, right? You see, because they're getting those reps early. So by the time they get to 7th, 8th, 9th grade, they have 4 or 5 years of experience and being in situations and in different positionings, so they already have learned what some people will learn in high school, at an early age. It's just now it's maneuvering their body because their body is going through some form of a growth pattern, but ultimately, it's all about being hungry, being persistent, staying true to the sport, staying in love with the sport. I think if you're able to do that with time, success will come.
Right on. Ty, before we get out of here, is anything else you want to give us?
Man, I appreciate you having me on, man. I'm not one to jump on and do podcasts and jump on and be in front of the camera. I'm kind of shy in front of the camera. So, I appreciate you having me on, man. And I hope that our viewers or your viewers, man, I hope that they can pick up something from it, and, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Embrace the journey. Learn every step of the way.
Well, Coach, it was definitely a great conversation, and it was an honor having you on. So I want to thank you again. And it is Dr. Ty Scarlett, soon to be Dr. Ty Scarlett and Rich, and we will see you guys next time.